Tonight, Rand Paul announces he's running for president, but the question is, will he get help or maybe some distance from the Grand Old Party? And then, while we wait for Hillary Clinton to announce, and we're expecting to hear pretty soon, we get some news about what Governor Andrew Cuomo's political future may look like. Also, Edward Snowden's interview with comedian John Oliver is no laughing matter, why the focus on privacy even more topical now than it even was when Snowden first surfaced. Look at the new music. All right, good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and we start here with a race for the White House. I know, it's only April, but trust me, the ball's already rolling here. Republican Rand Paul announcing his candidacy today, the Kentucky senator explaining why he's running.
I have a vision for America. I want to be part of a return to prosperity, a true economic boom that lifts all Americans, a return to a government restrained by the Constitution.
Paul, the second Republican to announce that, following Ted Cruz's, now both running against Republican establishment, if you listen to him, and that could make life tricky for the GOP. I want to bring in our panel right now: Dominic Carter, political journalist and author; Jessica Proud, Republican strategist and PR expert with the November team. She's also the spokeswoman for the Dan Donovan congressional campaign, and I think that's going to go quite well for you. And Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. As we talk about Rand Paul, I think we'd all agree, no matter what we like, dislike, he's interesting. For sure. From a national perspective, does he muddy the brand in terms of who Republicans are, because they already have attack ads against him, but some people seem to really like his libertarian tact in terms of the party? He's different, but is that what power brokers in the party really want?
Well, I think what's great about him is he really is hard to sort of define and put it in a box. I don't think the primary voters want the Republican leaders dictating who the candidate should be. I didn't get a chance to watch his speech, but I read the transcript, and I tell you, like, he hit on a lot of great points, and, you know, so I can't judge the style, but he really took on both parties. He took on the Republicans for failing to act on a lot of these issues and sticking to the brand, like the debt going up and spending. He took on Republicans with that, but he also took on Obama and really gave a lot of red meat out. So I think, you know, he's definitely someone that I think a younger crowd is interested in. He's done a lot to reach out to different constituencies. He speaks Spanish. He's going into black communities, into the inner cities, talking about why the liberal policies have failed them. So I think he's definitely someone to watch, because he could catch on, and he has that sort of cult following, if you will.
Well, and we're going to remind some of the viewers what makes him interesting, because he's taken interesting positions on issues that you wouldn't neatly put him in the box for Republicans, and then some other issues that, as we like to say, he's going to have some splaining to do. Let's first start off with you guys about some of those questionable positions. You may remember a couple of years ago I made some headlines because he opposed a federal ban on whites-only lunch counters. Basically, he was saying, you know what, we shouldn't tell businesses how to run their business. One said, well, what about the civil rights? He goes, yeah, I don't agree with that. I'm not racist, this is his words, but you know what, if a business wants to exclude people based off race, gender, whatever else, that should be up to them. He also called Medicare socialism. He compared universal health care to slavery, and he was initially a supporter of Clive and Bundy. Remember that crazy guy out west? All right, now, how about some of the positions that don't fit, as Jessica says, neatly into a political box here? He goes after the GOP over voting rights, saying some of those state laws that they've had in place, especially in southern states, that depressed voting in minority communities were a bad thing. He also wants to rein in the NSA. He says too much blanket surveillance. That's not what freedom is. Certainly taking a unique tack against stuff like the Patriot Act. We'll talk about that more later on the program, when usually Republicans will defend that one to the hilt. He also works with Cory Booker on prison reform here. And when it comes to foreign policy, he's a Republican who doesn't believe that we should have a stake, let alone boots on the ground throughout the Middle East. And he's been very critical of some of the wars in both, obviously, Afghanistan and Iraq. And Andrew, when we talk about issues about legalizing pot, we talk about, as Jessica said, you know, debt and you know, in terms of huge, in terms of expenditures without paying for them, like the war in Iraq. Interesting. But have you figured them out?
You keep using that term.
Well,
Interesting.
I can go a lot of other different ways, but I do think it's a fair description of him.
I think he's an unusual, and so far from what we know of the 2016 Republican field, he's a unique candidate. The establishment Republicans aren't going to like him a lot because he's going to challenge some of their positions. And the evangelical or social conservatives, I think, are not going to like him a lot because he's challenging their positions as well. He still has that libertarian base, and that was the second panel that you were talking about with the NSA. You mentioned marijuana and some other issues. That libertarian approach appeals to younger voters. He has a chance to expand the Republican primary base a little bit. If he can grow off that, if he can start with what he's inherited from his father, the Ron Paul in 2008, the Ron Paul in 2012, secure that support and then build off of it, it's going to be interesting.
You know, we hear a lot of
rebrand
people
himself
say,
that way.
Andrew, libertarian, but for them it's lip service, for good or for bad, and I certainly think it's a mixed bag. He really believes it. He'll say it out loud, and wherever the audience is, he thinks that government's a problem, not part of the solution. And when people take it down the eventual road, well, would you then say this? He's not afraid to go down that road. Now, I think it's insane, the idea that we want to get rid of the Civil Rights, Act, that we basically want to, if somebody wants to serve me, but they don't want to let Dominic sit at the same table, that's okay. I think going back in American history, there is a role for government, and our founding fathers thought so. That said, at least, I'll give him points for being authentic.
He is authentic, and the positions are somewhat unusual, and he'll be the only one on the debate podium espousing those views. He's also, when he's in the zone, he's a very good speaker, and he can articulate those positions particularly well. So he could be a bit of a challenge for the other primary contestants who are sharing a stage with him, and may force them to deal with some uncomfortable issues.
Dominic, you look at the calendar, this kind of message does better in Republican circles in the Iowas and the New Hampshires, and as we know in the political calendar, first and second, right? Do you see a pathway at all for him? He's going to have trouble raising a lot of money, but at the same end, you can distinguish him on the platform compared to the other people, and I give him more credit than, let's say, a Dr. Carson or something, right? Do you dismiss this guy out of hand, or do you think he's got a chance?
Ben Carson is starting to sound a lot like a nut job. He has no chance at winning the nomination. And Jessica Proud has more of an opportunity to win the Republican nomination than Senator Rand Paul does. Now, with that said, he is the type of guy, Richard, we've heard for years the Republican Party, certainly leadership, talking about, quote, expanding the base, Big Tent, expanding the base, Big Tent. He is the guy that can do that. Now, what's going to help him tremendously is in a debate setting. He's not going to raise as much money as the other candidates. He's going to continue on with the solid base of what his father started with. He has zero chance, zero, of winning the nomination. But he can ignite and stand out, and that's exactly what he's going to do, because I've watched this guy as of the last 6 months. I watched him on Bill Maher's show talking about reforming prison sentences and so on. He's gone to Howard University. He's doing things that traditionally Republicans and perhaps Democrats don't even do. So he appears to be the real deal. He's not going to win, though.
Now, if you're the Jeb Bush of the world, you say, oh gosh, this guy's going to make me take questions in terms of, where I want my policy in the Middle East to be, because he's not afraid to say, bring them all home, right? Does this guy get me nervous because he's going to support legalizing pot or whatever else? Does he bring more agita Republicans, or as Dominic says, he really widens the base?
Well, I think, when Ted Cruz got in the race, everyone sort of thought that he bookended the field, like, as being the far extremist, and then everyone sort of comes in more moderately after that, which is ostensibly true. But I think, I personally think it's a good thing to have a robust primary where a lot of these issues are fleshed out. You saw Jeb Bush last week on the religious freedom law. He said one thing to one audience and another to another. So it's going to force them to be better candidates and hopefully end up with whoever our nominee is that's battle tested. Whereas on the other side, Hillary has only made mistakes thus far and won't have probably a vigorous primary when the general election comes.
I think Rand Paul's a better general election candidate than he would be a Republican primary candidate. It's going to be hard for him to find the right collection of votes in the Republican primary to win. Having said that, I do not dismiss him the way that Dominic does. He's running third and fourth right now in the early polls in Iowa and New Hampshire. There is a voice. There is that tapped reservoir of support that his father had from those two presidential runs. There will be money available there.
How good did it do for his father?
Well, I mean, his father was the last guy standing.
In fact, he's running away from some of his dad's positions.
Yes,
it's
he has
interesting.
moderated
We all
himself a
would,
little bit.
considering
But
how well his father did.
The important thing to note about him is he's very effective in the social media. He sort of bypasses the mainstream media. He's on Twitter himself all the time. He sort of has like these crazy tweets.
If kids voted between 18 and 25,
look, they did for Obama.
They did, but we saw it one time. If they voted on, especially what he has to say about marijuana and a few other issues, it would be interesting. The question is, will he be the first guy that can really turn them out in big numbers on the Republican side? As you said, he certainly is at the forefront of the social media on that side. All right, we come back. We're going to stay a little closer to home. Hillary Clinton expected to announce her White House run this month, and that is impacting, believe it or not, Governor Andrew Cuomo. And could he actually be thinking about running for governor again? We'll talk about that and more after this.